Joellen is an invaluable member of the community IPM team here at New York State IPM. She is known for many talents and much IPM knowledge, but today she'll be talking with you about alternatives for your lawn. So thank you very much, Joellen, and go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to help launch the 2023 First Friday events. And this also gives me the opportunity to talk about a project that I had started in the before times, BC, before COVID. So alternative to lawns, I want to make sure we're all on the same page using the same definition. So when we talk about lawns, typically we're talking about traditional turf grass. Here in the Northeast, that's usually going to be a mixture of Kentucky bluegrass, ryegrasses, fescues. They're mowed pretty short from don't do that, to as high as your mower can go. And depending on the time of year and how fast the grass is growing, that can go from 1 to 6 times per month that needs to be mowed. Then there's bee lawns, which is a mix of those same turf grasses, but also incorporating intentional low-growing flowering plants. Again, we're mowing it at about the same height of the traditional turf grass, and they are promoted as needing to be mowed less, so maybe 1 to 3 times per month, depending on the time of year and how fast everything is growing. Urban meadows, on the other hand, these are going to be more natural areas. They can be much taller. You might need to mow them to keep out invasive species, woody vegetation. So maybe 1 time per month or 1 time per season, depending on the pressures that you see. And then there's the intentional, more manicured pollinator garden, where you're choosing plants that are going to support pollinators and beneficial insects throughout all of their life stages. So that doesn't need to be mowed at all. They still need work. So if we're talking about replacing lawns, I do want to just touch on the benefits that lawns can provide. They can provide a cooling effect in summer, especially as compared to asphalt or pavement. Depending on how they're managed, they can provide some carbon storage. They can slow down runoff, and with these floods we're getting, heavy rains, that's really an issue. That slowing down allows the water to soak into the soil. It can provide habitat. Mostly they're there because of the look. This is just an accepted visual appeal throughout the United States. And an undeniable benefit is that turf grass can be played on. They can take foot traffic really well. So you can't, if you don't believe me, this is all laid out in Lawns and Cities, and the link to that is going to be put in the chat box. And if you're interested in how to manage turf grass to get these benefits, there's also another couple of links that are going to go in there. So if we look at these different lawn alternatives, when my partner, Lindsay Christensen, who was an educator at Cooperative Extension in Albany, where I'm housed, we were looking at how do we promote pollinators. And one of the things we knew was that the desire for low maintenance yards is a constraint for many people that have not yet created habitat for pollinators and beneficials. So we really want to lean into that. So to get the benefits of traditional lawn without a lot of maintenance, we decided we were going to do the bee lawn. If you want to learn more about urban meadows, Penn State is actually doing a webinar on February 25th, and the link to that is in the chat. And Amara Dunn did an excellent job in her Good Bugs in Your Garden presentation, and that link is also in there if you're interested in pollinator gardens. So bee lawns, again, it's that turf grass varieties and intentional low-growing flower varieties that can withstand mowing and some foot traffic, and they're going to provide the pollen and nectar resources for the other critters that are out there. So Lindsay came from the University of Minnesota. She had done work with pollinators. So she brought a resource to our attention, Flowering Bee Lawns, a toolkit for land managers, which is linked in the chat. And looking at converting lawn options, they gave 5. So you have overseeding, where you're putting seed over existing turf grass. But you're going to either scalp that turf grass or aerate it. So scalping is really mowing so low that you cut into the crown of the grass or the white part of it, and it really knocks it back, and it provides open space for the seed to come in. The aerator is a machine that will poke holes into the ground or actually remove entire cores. Lindsay really wanted to play with one of those, so aeration was one of the methods that we chose. And then there's more full-blown renovation where you have the physical removal of that existing lawn. And we chose to do that through the use of a sod cutter. We rented both the aerator and the sod cutter from a local hardware store. Solarization is also an option, as is the use of herbicides. So we decided to use 4 of these when we were doing our project. So we chose a place at the Cooperative Extension Office in Albany County. You can go there and look at it right now. So we had the scalping, and our mower that we have access to did not go low enough to truly do scalping. So it was really just very low mowing. So we didn't get that damage to the lawn that we were looking for. So we kind of saw that as a failure. Sod removal, lawn aeration, and the solarization, we had to wait until the next year because it was too late in the season to really get any effect by that. We figured that where we removed grass altogether was going to be the most effective. So here is the sod remover. Whoops. Here is the sod remover at work. It's loud. That machine is really heavy, and it's cutting underneath, and it's cutting the root systems. And when you see this promoted, you then go behind it and you roll up the turf grass. That did not work for us. Well, it's really poor quality lawn. So basically we had to come in with shovels afterwards and pick it up shovelful by shovelful. It was just a ton of work. But we did end up with bare soil. Then we got the fun part of picking out our seed mixes. There's multiple ones that are out there, but we decided on 5, including the University of Minnesota Bee Lawn Mix, which was 4 different fescues and 4 flowers. They no longer sell this mix, but it is available from other companies with ranges from $40 to $125 for enough seed to cover 1,000 square foot area. So you want to do your homework. We chose 2 from PT Lawn Seed. One was Xeriscaping and one was Fleur de Lawn, very fancy sounding. They both had 3 different types of turf grass. The Xeriscape lawn alternative had 3 different flowers, and 4 different flowers, and the Fleur de Lawn had 5 flowers back in 2019 when we bought it, but they have since added baby blue eyes to their mix, and now it's 6 flowers. We also chose American Meadows Alternative Lawn Wildflower Seed Mix because look at that picture. Well, how could you not want to choose it? 1 type of turf grass and a wonking 12 different flowers that were part of this. One of the things that we noticed is that the high rate was 1 pound per 1,000 square feet as compared to 5 pounds for the Minnesota mix. So we were really curious about how that was going to work, but also really grateful because it was the most expensive of the blends that we chose. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we also went with an Agway Conservation blend, which is 4 different types of turf grasses and white clover that was added to it. So it's only 5% flower, but we thought we might get some of that pollinator benefit at a cost that was 45 to 75% less than our other choices. We also decided to do dormant overseeding. So after we did the cleaning out, the preparation in October, we came back to seed. We hand seeded these different areas with these blends. And the benefit of dormant overseeding is that the freeze thaw cycle kind of opens up the soil, and you can see that in the inset that I have here. So that movement of the soil allows the seed to kind of sift into there, and you get better seed soil contact. Ideally, you would do this right before a snowstorm, but 2020 was the winter that wasn't. So March 6th, we decided we just needed to get out there to have any chance of that freeze thaw cycle really helping us out. One benefit of snow is that it hides the seeds from birds, so we don't know how much we might have lost to predation. 3 weeks later, we got the snow if they were hoping for, which was great because the other benefits of snow is that it puts weight on the seeds and it pushes it farther into the soil, increasing soil seed contact. And while it's melting slowly, usually, it's going to draw the seed into the soil using capillary action as it's being pulled down into the soil through gravity. So this was also when COVID hit. So if we were looking for a hands-off project, this was it, because we did very little with this during the time that we've been running this project. We came back in June to do projects, and this was the American Meadows Lawn Wildflower Mix. And look, we've got baby blue eyes, we have alyssum, we have California poppy. We were very excited. The picture is a little bit deceiving though, because when you look at it from a different angle, there's not a lot of coverage there. This was the one that was 1 pound per 1,000 square feet that we were worried about. And we were right to be worried. This just wasn't enough seed to cover this area. There's so much bare ground for the weeds to move in. You can also see in this picture where our sod cutter didn't take out the deep-rooted dandelions. So they are doing very well with the lack of competition. But to be fair, if we look at our other sites that had much higher seeding rates, they don't really look that much better. So it was very dry. We'd had no plan to water this. So if you do this, make sure you water it. June was also the time that we put down our plastic to do the solarization. So we laid it out, tacked it down, walked away. We didn't touch it again until October. So much easier than the sod cutter. Came back, we had blooms that were happening throughout the year, which is great for the pollinators. You don't want to have flowers that just provided at one time of the year. But again, it was a dry year. When we came back in the fall, we did have some flowers still, but that Agway conservation green really did look the best out of all of them, which makes sense because turfgrass really thrives in the cooler weather in the fall. We then came back in December, and because we had such low uptake, we ended up reseeding all of our plots, and we also doubled up the amount of seed that we put into the solarization site, because when you're dormant overseeding, they do recommend that you double the amount that you put down. And because we were not relying on snow at all, we did use a seed-free straw to cover all of the plots. So these are some of the results from 2021. You can see that we got a lot more uptake with that American Meadows blend. Still a lot of bare spots there. And it was a different type of year. So the flowering happened earlier. On the right-hand side, though, this was the blend that had yarrow in it, really took over these spots, filled it in really nicely. And from a distance, you would never know that this was not regular turf grass. The following year, again, we had some earlier blooms. Things are thriving and failing. And if you have any experience with meadow planting, this is what you would expect to see. It takes years for those flowers to figure out what's going to do best within that particular site. And with the changing weather patterns that you're going to get from year to year, yarrow still doing really good in those plots. They also had the least amount of intrusion of plants or weeds like dandelions coming in. Summer of 2020, it was hot. It was dry. Basically, all of us were looking at a lot of dormant grass, but we did still get flowers, and thyme really flourished within the different plots that had that within the seed mix, which was the Minnesota blend and the American Meadows. And coming back in fall 22, after it had cooled down and we started to get some rain, you can see that in the plots where we had removed all of the vegetation, all we did was we hadn't touched these areas since we put down the seed in December of 2021. And just putting the seed down really helps to these areas that no fertilizer, they just get mowed from a year-to-year basis. So I'm going to continue to monitor this. We did get some visitors that came to us with the flowers that we created. We had a lot of different types of sweat bees that came in, hoverflies, other types of beneficials like ground beetles and ladybird beetles. So I still consider this to be a preliminary project, but here are my recommendations. Solarization was the cleanest and the easiest prep. So if you don't mind looking at plastic for 4 months, this is definitely the way to go. Have a plan to water. Do as we say, not as we do. Water is very important for establishment. When choosing your seed mix, go for the ones that have the greatest amount of diversity, because the different plants are going to thrive under your different soil conditions and under the different weather conditions. So the more variety you have, the more likely you're going to have stuff that's going to do really well. And go for the highest recommended rate. And if you're going to do that dormant overseeding, make sure that you double it. Another option is to skip everything that I just said and embrace the spontaneous lawn flowers that come into your own yard. This is actually a picture from my backyard where I allow the clovers to reign supreme. I mow, I occasionally fertilize, and I get a lot of the benefits of those pollinators coming to visit me. Thank you to all the people that helped with this project. And is there any questions?
Thank you, Joellen. I have a couple more links I have to paste into the chat. One question that came through was someone was wondering what kind of flowering plants would be in a bee lawn. And I know you had a species list for all the different mixes. Could you give a recap of like maybe some really common ones or something like that?
Absolutely. Clover was in all of the mixes. The fescues, as I mentioned, I'm sorry, yarrow was a big one and did really well. Sweet alyssum was another one that is going to flower at that low mowing height. And then in that American Meadows, there was the baby blue eyes and the California poppies that we saw a lot of, also creeping daisies. I didn't see Roman chamomile come up. We did see some Johnny jump ups. Oh, and the creeping thyme.
Great. Can you talk about sun exposure needed for these various mixes?
So all of these are going to do much better with full sun, just like any traditional lawn.
Okay.
So these are not selections that were made with shade in mind.
In your shopping, did you come across anything that were sold as shade tolerant pollinator lawns? No.
I did not. And this is hard enough to find regular traditional turf grass blends that are going to work.
Okay.
Typically, you want to lean into the fescues and shady areas.
Okay. Thank you.
Moss is a really good alternative in shady areas.
And no mowing.
And no mowing.
There was a few questions about soil. So did you test the soil first? And what was the pH if you did?
We did not test it. I will say that this is an incredibly heavy clay soil, which is part of what made removing the sod so much fun.
And is there a particular type of soil that works best for these plantings?
They didn't have any recommendations for that.
Okay.
So that's another reason to go with a great variety, because depending on your soil, some are going to do better than others. Okay.
I'm looking through, there was another soil question. Any thoughts for very sandy soil? Anything in particular?
My only thought there is you really need to make sure that you water if you have sandy soil.
Okay.
Looking
Um,
over this plant list, I suspect that like Roman chamomile is going to do better in a sandy soil than it does in the heavy clay.
Okay. Was the plastic for solarization doubled? So it was 2 layers, or was it just a single layer?
That was a single layer.
Okay.
And
So
we
many
tacked it down with lawn staples.
So you said you tacked it down with lawn staples.
Yes.
So many great questions. Let's do maybe one more. You may not know the answer to this, but are there more legal protections for a homeowner that wants to grow an urban meadow? I think they're referring to, there was a recent New York Times article about a couple that was dealing with a homeowners association, and they had to fight to get permission to have a meadow. It's okay if you don't know the answer to that question.
Well, I know that this is something that's been talked about and providing protections for people that want to put in the more naturalized areas. I suspect that these are going to be more acceptable. And they certainly can't accuse you of not mowing your lawn because it needs to be mowed just like a regular lawn does.
Nice.
But that's the best I can do from that legal perspective.
Yes, we're not legal experts. Thank you, Joellen. There are some more questions in the chat. I'm going to make sure that I save those, and we'll get those answers posted with the YouTube recording of today's event. I do want to move on because for our IPM Minute today, because we had so many folks share their pictures of IPM they were doing this past year, we wanted a chance to kind of feature those pictures and give you a chance to do a year in review for 2022 and see all of the great IPM that was happening. So I am going to share that video with you. All right. Thank you again to everyone who shared your pictures with us. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for everyone who has told other people about this event. I'm going to post in the chat the link where you can find the recording for today's event. Once it is posted, this video is also on YouTube, and I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. And please encourage your friends, people you know, to sign up for the rest of our events this year. Our next event is going to be Friday, February 3rd, and we'll be talking about IPM for indoor cockroaches. Not something we want to think about, but better to have a plan before you encounter a problem. And then our IPM minute will be on treating pets for fleas and ticks. So I hope you will join us in February, and thanks for coming today.